Hi everybody, I'm an alcoholic and my name is Art. I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me here today to share at the ORC. It's quite an honor and a pleasure. You know, it shows you how God works in my life. The timer for the meeting today just happens to be a guy I sponsor. And I asked him before the meeting, I said, what are you going to do when you get to 2 minutes? And I'm still rambling on. It's going to be interesting to see. So, my story is not any different than anybody else who came in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I'll tell you this, my parents took a picture of me when I was 2 years old. Not that I remember that, but on the corner of the picture they used to put the year, and it was 1963. And it's a picture of a young Art, full head of hair, with a diaper, sitting on the floor, clutching a stubby beer bottle. Now, if you go 48 years in front of that, I'm on the floor, clutching a bottle, no hair, and no diaper, and I really could have used a diaper at that point in my life. As you can see, there wasn't a lot of growth for me. I actually lost a lot of hair, but you know, I'm the youngest. I have a brother and sister. My brother happens to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous also, so you'll hear me mention him a few times. You know, I'm just going to grab some water here. Thank you. Water on the rocks. You know, I had a great childhood growing up. My parents were great providers. They weren't drinkers at all. My dad worked for the airlines, so I got to fly around as a kid on all sorts of places. And he also did some volunteer work at the Canadian International Air Show. So I was able to fly in during the air show in a World War II trainer at Harvard, and got a lot of helicopter rides and got to see a lot of planes really up close that you'd only see maybe online or in pictures. So it's a pretty cool way to grow up. You know, I had my first drink when I was 11. We were in a buddy's basement, and his dad had a stock bar, one of those stock bars that at the end of my drinking I would have said, I'm good here till I die. Just leave me here and I'll just drink this and die. And we made this concoction and we called it Jungle Juice. And it was probably the worst tasting stuff I had ever tried up to the whole 11 years of my life at that point. And this is what I recall. God, it burned going down. And it hit my stomach and it wanted to come right back up. And you know, and then after a while, it stopped doing that, and then the miracle started happening. I felt normal. I felt that this was the way I was supposed to see the world. I always had a fascination about alcohol, even before I even picked up a drink. There was just something magical I seen in it, and I wanted it, and it looked great in the movies, and the cowboys slamming the glasses down on the table and stuff. I couldn't have done that on my first drink. But, you know, it just occurred to me that I really don't know anybody else except members of Alcoholics Anonymous that remember their first drink in detail the way we do. I remember asking my wife one day, I go, do you remember the first time you drank? She goes, no. I can remember it in detail. And that was 51 years ago. That's a long time to remember detail like that. I don't remember my first day in high school. I really don't remember the first girlfriend I had. But I can sure remember that first drink. And that night I had that Jungle Juice and stuff. I had that hour and a half of just bliss. And then it was blackout and throwing up, so I was told, and getting dropped off at mom and dad's front porch and the doorbell ringing and the boys taking off. And then I went. You know, by the time I was 15, because I had picked up some bad habits and stuff as what I thought would be a proper employment. And so I was a thief. And this is going to prove what type of thief I was. I was in a Quebec juvenile court with my mom and dad, and I had been charged with 28 break-in entries and 2 auto thefts. And I was about to go to jail. But I didn't know this, but my mom and dad had went and saw a lawyer, and the lawyer told them, if you get him a job in the province of Ontario, he probably won't have to do jail time. And that's what my parents did, and I left the next week and came up to Ontario to live at 15. And you'd think in Ontario it would be harder to get alcohol for a 15-year-old. It wasn't. I lived at Keele and Lawrence, and it was a busy street, and I'd go out and just hail a cab down, I'd say, I want to go to liquor store, beer store. I need you to go in for me, and I need you to drop me back at this building, and a great big tip. It never failed. Never failed. It worked easier than Montreal. Montreal, I had to forge a note. Please give my son Art 24, and you had to drink what Pops was drinking, right? Which was like Red Cap or something, and Carlsberg, and not that I cared, but and it'd be signed Art's mom. And I'd walk out with a 2-4. But here, I got to drive. It was almost like limousine service for me at 15 to go up to the liquor store and come back. And, this went on pretty for a long time. And by the time I was 16, I was a heavy daily drinker. So I was working in Toronto, and I'm drinking in the middle of the night. I'm drinking in the morning. I'm drinking at work. And then about 2 months after having this job, which was really one of my first jobs I ever had that was legal, right? That was legal. Is one payday I got 2 checks. I said, look, I got 2 checks. And the guy sitting beside me goes, no, you just got fired. I said, oh, but I still got 2 checks. So I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1985. It was through a treatment center down here in Toronto. It was on Bayview. It was one of the old Eaton's cottages, and it was 28 days then, right? And when I phoned, I'm sure they told me that don't drink 72 hours before you come, Art. But what I heard is, you might as well drink till you come in the front doors of the treatment center. Because you're about to quit drinking, why would you stop 72 hours before you went in to quit? It didn't make sense. Well, when I walked in this treatment center, they frowned on my kind of thinking right off the hop, and they sent me to detox. Now, this would be the first time I was going to wake up in detox. I had been to detox many times. I used to go visit my brother down in Ossington all the time. I'd go down there and hang out with the boys. And one day they were doing a renovation for them down there, and they sent us all to the Marley game. All these guys from detox, and me, 16-year-old, with my brother who's detoxing off alcohol. And we're down at the Marley's game. And I'm telling you, turned around, it was just like looking at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Sitting there watching the Marley game with all these guys. But I woke up in this detox center on a plastic bed and a plastic pillow, not sure how I'd got there and what I was doing there. And then they took me, when I was okay, they took me back to the treatment center, and I did 28 days there. And they went to a lot of AA meetings, and they encouraged us to get phone numbers galore. Just get a whole bunch of phone numbers, meet as many people as you can. And that's what I did. I started taking phone numbers down and stuff, and 28 days was up, and I went back to Mississauga, and I started going to AA meetings in the area and stuff. And then one day, after going out on a bender, because I didn't stay sober very long, because I really thought I was too young to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous at 24 at this time. I was really drunk, and I was on, now they frown on me talking, how can I put this, alcohol enhancers that I used to take a lot of. And I called up a guy whose phone number I had, and his name was Bob. And now I remember Bob when he came to my house and picked me up. And, I remember getting in his car and looking at him. He goes, well, my name's Bob, and yeah, I'm Art. And then that's all I remember. And the rest of this story comes from the good members of the Queensway Saturday Night Group in Etobicoke. But apparently I went to that meeting, and I helped put out chairs. And back then you could smoke, because it was 1985, and I was putting ashtrays in every second chair. And then where I am right now at the Queensway Group, if I was there, behind the speaker, there was a stage. And up on that stage, there was a couch. And I proceeded to go up there and pass out cold. Now, the members put me in another member's car and drove me home. Now, I'm married at this time, and we have a small son. And you guys ever wake up the next day and you shouldn't ask what happened the night before, but you really can't help yourself? So I asked my wife, I said, what happened last night? She goes, well, you went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, get out of here. She goes, that's not all. 3 strangers had to carry you in from a car and carry you up to bed because you were passed out cold. She goes, do you think you belong there now? Now, up to this point in my life, I had been politely asked to leave school, a little firmer to leave the province of Quebec. I had been in the Oakville Psych Ward 3 times, the cardiac ward once where I lost the use of my legs because I had convulsed so bad, and the contagious because I had contracted hepatitis C from my drug use. And now I've been carried out of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she's going, do you think you belong there now? I'm very careful what I say to young people coming in the program, because I know when I was young back then, and someone came up to me and goes, geez, I wish I found the program when I was your age. And I'm thinking, I don't even belong here. That's the way my mind took it. Because I have no idea what brought a young person into Alcoholics Anonymous or an old person, but I know this. It was bad enough for them to go, maybe I'll try that AA. So I'm really careful what I say. I went back and I joined that Queensway Saturday night group, the same group that those members carried me out of. And I got a sponsor, and I started getting active within the group, and that sponsor took me to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and guided me through the 12 steps. And I started getting active in my group. I was the ashtray washer. And I'd love to tell you I love that job. I go to every business meeting and say, I want to greet. Say, we don't want you greeting. You're doing a fantastic job in the kitchen washing them ashtrays. We've never had a better ashtray washer in this group's history. But I'm so whacked out of it, I really believe them. So the next business meeting, I'd say the same thing. I want to greet. She said, we don't want you greeting, Art. You're just doing a fine job. Why don't you make the coffee now? I said, are you guys ever going to let me greet? He goes, have you ever seen what you're like when someone sneaks up beside you and says hi? You're on the ceiling. We don't want a guy like you greeting a meeting. Greeting people coming in. This is what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, we'll peel him down in a bit. He's always up there. You know, as time went on in that Queensway group, I was 8 years sober, and by this time my wife and I, we have 2 children, a son and a daughter. And our marriage is pretty rocky. I used to be gone all the time when I was drinking, and now I'm gone all the time at all hours of the night, answering phone calls, meeting guys for coffee at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I wasn't accepting my responsibility as a father or a husband, and we weren't getting along very well at all. So we decided that we would move up to the Aurelia area because we always liked it up there. We hated coming home when we were camping. So we decided to move up there. So the whole family, we all moved up there. And slowly but surely, I started to get away from Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't get a new sponsor when I moved up, and I didn't join a new home group. And you know what? I stopped communicating with God. And then, which means I didn't help anybody except myself. And slowly, everything started to come back. The habits, the way I acted, all the isms came back. It was 1997. I was 11 years. My sister came up to visit us for a weekend. And I thought she was coming up for a visit, but she was coming up to tell me that my dad had contracted a rare brain disease and he was going to die, and there was no cure. And I had no answers. I had no idea what to do. And the pain was so great. I can still remember standing in the line at the beer store in Aurelia. And here's the insanity of that. I knew exactly what was about to happen. And I still stood in line. And I still ordered 12 beers when I got up there. Dave's Genuine Draft, because I liked the commercials on TV. You know, for the next 2 weeks, I sat in this garage that I had at this home that we were living up by Lake Dalrymple, just outside of Aurelia. And I was sleeping inside this 4-claw bear bathtub, those big deep ones. I was refinishing it. And I was sleeping in there, and then about 2 weeks after that, I was to walk away from my wife, my son and daughter. And I barely seen them for the next 14 years. I'd be in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I try to make it for Christmas, but I get drunk. And my ex-wife she was really good with the kids. She said, your dad would love to be here, but he's sick. I'd miss calling on their birthday. Your dad would love to call you, but he's sick. In 2009, I was walking the streets of Mississauga, and I called my brother up. I said, please come and pick me up and take me to detox. And he did what any member of Alcoholics Anonymous would do, and a brother. He came and found me and picked me up. And you know, I think a guy like me would be grateful getting in his car. And I got in his car and I looked at him. I said, hey man, what detox was I in last month? I don't want to go back to the same one. It's going to look like I had a serious drinking problem. He goes, "You're an idiot." And off we went to Brampton for three days of bubble observancy until I could get down the dry Cheerios they gave me or Fruit Loops, whatever it was, until they let me out into I'd say the population, the other detox guys that got out of the bubble, right? And I stayed in there for about a week and a half, and in there they talked to me a lot about going into a long-term treatment place, something 3 months or 6 months. But I still had a bit of an attitude going, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I was in AA before. I had no idea what I was doing. Nothing. I had nothing. So I agreed, and they let me actually stay for a full 2 weeks in detox because I had no place to go. They said, you got to figure out a place to go until you get into this treatment center. And the only thing I could think of was to call my ex-wife. She lived in Dundas, and I called her up and I said, I explained the situation. I was trying to stay sober until I got into this treatment center. And she goes, let me talk to Jennifer, which is our daughter. Call back tomorrow. We'll let you know. I called back the next day, and she got on the phone. She goes, yeah, you can stay here for as long as you need until you get into that treatment place under 2 conditions. Absolutely no drinking and absolutely no drugs at all. I said, okay. And my brother picked me up from detox, and he took me down to Clarkson Go Station, and he pulled a 20 out of his wallet, and he went to hand it to me, and he looked at me and goes, yeah, I'll be right back. And he went inside, bought me a one-way ticket to Hamilton, gave me enough money for a can of Coke and a bag of chips, and said, good luck. And off I went to Dundas. And I got in Dundas, I got off the bus, and my daughter was there, and I couldn't even look at her. I was filled with shame and guilt. I'd rather be any place than where I was in Dundas, Ontario. And I stayed there, and I used to hound that treatment center. Every day I'd phone 4 times. You got a bed opening? Got a bed opening? Got a bed opening? And finally they did. I got in 2 weeks. And I went in there. It was a 3-month program, and I went in there. I did everything they asked me to do. And then they drove me down to the Oakville shelter, and I went into the shelter and started going to meetings. Now, I had great sponsorship through the years. I did. I really did. But when you're dealing with a guy like me who's a habitual liar and he won't listen, it's a very hard guy to sponsor. But these guys tried to stay with me, and I wouldn't listen. I finally saved up enough money to rent a room. And I think I was in that room for maybe 3 months. And right after a meeting because I'm still not doing anything in AA. I haven't really committed to a group. I'm not being active in the group. I'm not communicating with my sponsor, and I'm not doing anything he asked me. And after a little while, I ended up going back out. So December 21st, 2010, I woke up on the floor of this room I was renting by Square One. And by the time I got to my feet and then looked in the mirror, that man looking back at me didn't deserve to live anymore. And I knew at that moment if I had a gun, I would have killed myself that day. I couldn't stand the darkness I was in. Then the idea came to me, why don't you try AA one more time? And I said a prayer, and I hadn't said an honest prayer in years. I said, God, I will do whatever anyone asks. Here comes my alcoholic ego. For 1 year. And if things don't get any better, I'm going to go back out and drink till I die. And then I picked up the phone and I phoned that recovery house I was in. And I don't know about you, but when I'm in a state of mind like that, I run into all these happy people of the world. It's like I'm a magnet. And I don't want to see happy people because it's beyond painful for me. And this is what I think I hear on the other end and see. Halton Recovery House, Rick speaking, how can I help you? I said, oh God, Rick, you're killing me. I said, it's Art. I said, can I please come back? I said, I'm about to be homeless again, and I'm not going to survive the winter. I need to come back. Can I please come back? He goes, I'll check it over with the team. Phone back tomorrow. And I did what he asked. I phoned back the next day. He goes, yeah, there's not a problem in it. You got to start phoning into this place every day like I did before in 2009, because it's 2011 now. And I started doing that, and I got in within a month, because I'm very persistent, especially in the wintertime. It's very cold out there, and they got a lot of nice meals up there. So I got in a month, and I walked in there, and I really could have slithered under the door. That's how low I felt about myself. See, my bottom didn't consist of, I lost my home, I had no money. My bottom consisted of, I couldn't stand the person I was. And if I couldn't stand me, you guys sure hated me. I knew that. That's what I thought I knew. And I went in there, and my first meeting inside this house, and there's 22 men in this house, in front of everybody, one of the guys that works there points at me and goes, so what's going to be different this time, Art? And at first I want to get my back all up and get tough with him and stuff, and I just looked at him and I said, I don't know, man. I said, all I know is I got to keep trying. And again, I was to do everything they asked me. You know, everything at all. So it came up to I was there 3 months, and it was time for me to leave. And I remembered what this guy had asked me at this first in-house meeting in that treatment center. And I wrote an essay on what was going to be different. And to me, it was absolutely stunning, right? It was 3 pages. And you know, it sounds bigger than it is because I skip lines and I wrote big and stuff, but at least a solid paragraph and a half of what was going to be different. I'm going to join a group. I'm going to do this and do that. And he was working in the office, and as I finished, and I walked by the office, and I slapped it on the counter. I said, that's what's going to be different. And I went outside, and I lit a smoke, and I was feeling really good about myself. And I hear this, hey, Art. And it's this guy, Richard, the guy that talked to me when I first went in. He goes, he's got my paper in his hand. He goes, so what's going to be different? And he crumpled it up and threw it in the garbage. I said, you just threw out my best what's going to be different stuff. How am I supposed to know what I'm going to do? He goes, quit making the same mistakes. That's all. Just quit making the same mistakes. So I was to leave there, and they drove me back down to the Oakville shelter again. And before I'd left that recovery house, we had watched this documentary on a woman called Sister Helen. And Sister Helen was in New York. And she used to take in people off the street who wanted to get clean and sober. And if you wanted to stay clean and sober, you could stay in this assisted living. And I thought, I had never tried anything like that. I'd be willing to put my name on something like that. And there just happened to be a new program starting in the Halton area. And I got my name on that. So I start going to meetings and stuff. And I was on my way to a meeting. It's the middle of July. It's a 95-degree day out. It is hot, smoking hot, humid, right? And my brother and I, we got the windows open because I'm smoking like a fiend. I light a cigarette in the morning, and I use my last smoke to light my new smoke throughout the rest of the day. And I'm smoking, and I got my sponsor on the phone, and I'm whining about being in the shelter, and I'm whining about them taking so long to get me into this sober living house and stuff. And I just a big whine machine. And he would listen to me for at least a solid 2 minutes, and he would say the same thing to me. All right, keep in touch, stay out of trouble. You're right, we're supposed to be Kalik. And I'm thinking, I don't think he fully understood everything that's going on with me. This is serious. But, I got my brother right next to me, so I just go on whining to him. And about 2 minutes into my whine, I start sweating and shaking and going, Jesus, I think I'm going to have a heart attack here. Like something's going on, something's not right. And because I'm hotter than I should be, because we have the windows open, so there's a breeze coming in as we're driving, but it's still smoking hot. And then out of the corner of my eye, I had seen what my brother had done. He had turned the seat warmer on me in that July day. And I looked at him, I said, why'd you do that? He goes, and I really cleaned that up for you guys. It didn't come out that way back then. And I said, why'd you do that? And he goes, all that stuff you're talking to your sponsor about, that's not real, brother. He said, but that heat you felt, now that was real. I laughed so hard, humor came back to my life that day. We laughed so hard, the tears were rolling down our face. My stomach hurt. Oh, it was a beautiful moment in my short journey as of that point. The following week we went to another meeting on a Saturday. We called it the Ironworkers, because it was in an Ironworkers hall, but the name of the group wasn't the Ironworkers. It was the Start Today group. I don't know. The Ironworkers worked for me, right? So we're at this meeting, and when I close my eyes at the end of the meeting, when we're saying the Lord's Prayer and we used to hold hands and stuff, well, I get this vertigo thing happening, right? And when I close my eyes, and at the end of the meeting, we're saying the prayer, and I'm starting to rock back and forth, and I feel the members' hands on each side of me tighten up, and I'm going, geez, I don't want to think I'm new, right? And I opened my eyes, and I looked around that meeting, and I seen 100 men and women praying as one. And I knew at that moment I was going to be okay. Shortly after this, I was to switch sponsors, and coincidentally enough, his name was Bob too. And I really thought you guys told me your name was Bob just to make it easier on my head. And Bob wanted to get going on the steps right away, and we were going to meet at the Oakville Hospital before the Sunday morning AA meeting. So about an hour and a half before the meeting, we'd meet in the Tim Hortons in Oakville Hospital. And the first session we had there, Bob guided me through steps 1, 2, and 3. And at the end of the meeting, Bob wanted to stand up in the middle of Tim Hortons and hold hands and pray. Oh, God. All I could think about was everybody in that Tim Hortons, because that Tim Hortons was packed in that hospital. All these people staring at me. Look at that guy over there, that religious freak. I didn't know what to think. I was scared. I didn't want to look around and go, oh man, I want out of here. I want out of here now. But later on, when I got home that afternoon, I came to the conclusion, like, I never cared what anybody thought of me when I was walking downtown Mississauga so drunk that I'd get 10 feet and I'd fall on my face. And the thing is, when you're that drunk and you try to speed up your feet to catch your body up, all that does is increase the velocity of impact. I don't realize that when I'm hammered. And I didn't care what people thought of me when I was passed out in a little parkette where there's a children's playground and families are there. I didn't care about what they thought of me then. And now I care about what people think of me in Tim Hortons because I'm holding hands and praying with another man. I went back the following Sunday. I didn't care. I held my head up high. I wanted everything Bob was offering. I wanted everything Alcoholics Anonymous had for me. I wanted it all. You know, the next thing he says, I need you to start on your step 4. I said, yeah, no problem, sure. And this was a Sunday. On Thursday, he calls me in the morning. He goes, hey, bring your 4th step to your meeting tonight, because I was a member of the 5th tradition in Oakville, which met on Thursday nights. So I automatically come to the conclusion, because it wasn't told to me, that we're going to do a 5th step. So I show up like 4:30. 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm in the parking lot waiting. And I'm the setup guy, right? And 5 o'clock, there's no Bob. 6, no Bob. 7, nothing. 7:45, he rolls in. Hey, how's it going? And I'm freaking out, running through the parking lot, waving my 4th step in my hand, going, we don't have time for this. He goes, relax, sit down. Let me look at that. And he looks at it, he goes, he wanted to see what type of effort I put into that 4th step, for he was going to take a whole day of his life to sit down with me to help me straighten out mine. He says, I'll pick you up Saturday, 9 o'clock. I said, okay. He came and picked me up, because now I'm in the sober house, came and picked me up. And he took me to his place, and his backyard was absolutely stunning. He had a pond back there with a waterfall. He had it stocked with koi until we killed him years later. That's another story. And he has these 2 Muskoka chairs with vines overhead. And in front of God, myself and Bob, we went through step 5 together. And we cried, and we laughed, and he shared, and I shared. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said something to me. It just blew me away. He goes, I'd like you to come inside and have dinner with my wife, my son, and my granddaughter. It wasn't 7, 8 months before this, I was walking into restaurants in Mississauga begging for food, and they were going, if you don't leave here, we're going to phone the police. And now this man's invited me in his house. I went in and sat down, and you know what the first thing I thought of was? Oh, thank God there's only 1 fork, 1 knife, 1 spoon. If there was multiple utensils, I think I would have lost her right there. And we shared a meal together. You know, Bob would guide me through the remaining steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then when we wrapped up the steps, and he goes, now you got to start practicing these steps daily. He says, you can go through these steps 100 times a year if you want, but if you don't practice them daily, you're going to spin your wheels. And I found that out. So Bob started answering the phones at the Halton service office. And on a Sunday, he calls me. He goes, hey, why don't you come down and help me answer the phones? I said, sure. So he picks me up. We'll go down to the Halton service office. We start answering phones, and we're listening to speaker tapes, we're going through books, and we're talking Alcoholics Anonymous. And then about 2-3 weeks later, he does one of these. I got to leave early today. Can you watch the phones for me for the last half of the shift? I said, well, what do? He says, you pick up the phone, you say, Alcoholics Anonymous, Art speaking. How can I help you? I said, okay, I can do that. See, my brain was fried for at least 2 years in my first 2 years of sobriety. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't do anything. I was just a basket case. So the next thing comes after doing half a shift is I get the phone call. It says, I can't make it on Sunday. Can you go cover my shift? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So, I take the bus and my bicycle and I go down there and I cover the shift. And then at the monthly business meeting that they usually have at the Halton Surface office, there's a lady who used to have all day Tuesday and Wednesday morning. And she found a new job, so all those shifts were open. And it came up at the business meeting and it goes, well, we need someone to cover these shifts. And there's Bob. Yeah, Art will do them too. So, mind you, I have a job where I can carry my phone and talk. I was a contractor, so I can do that, right? And I had lots of contacts in my phone to call people. But the next thing, like I'm doing Sunday, all day Tuesday and Wednesday morning. And this is what? It's old-timer trickery, I tell you. Cunning, the sponsor. Baffling, me. And powerful, what happened when I introduced service into my daily spiritual journey? How we doing, Brent? Pretty good. Before I left that recovery house, they asked me to write these 2 letters, and at the time, I thought they were absolutely crazy to ask me to write these 2 letters. I had no idea how it was going to help me in the future or what it would even do for me. But I had to write these 2 letters. One was to pretend I was my daughter writing me a letter. So I put down in this letter what I thought my daughter would want to say to me. And I wrote down, Dad, one day I'm going to get married. And I'm going to need you to walk me down the aisle. And I'm going to need you clean and sober to do that, or else you won't be there. In 2017, in the Dominican Republic, I got the chance to walk her down the aisle. And we walked down these 2 swimming pools. And for me, it was all the outside noise of the world shut off at that moment. All I could hear was her and see how beautiful she was. And I had that moment that I never thought was possible to have with my daughter. And I walked her down to the beach and passed her on to her new husband and sat down. Not me. God and Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't me. And the next letter I had to write to my son, and I just wrote from myself to him. And I wrote in it, one day, Brian, I'd love to be sitting by the water, having a coffee, listening to the band Our Lady Peace. I was 3.5 years sober. I was 3.5 years sober. And they were playing at the Burlington Sound of Music. And with the help of another member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I couldn't get a credit card at that time in my life, I was able to purchase 2 tickets. And we were down there rocking out. And as things in life go on, he was to meet a beautiful woman, and they got married. And they had their first child. And I had a phone call on the morning that Liam was born. Said, Dad, Shannon and Liam are doing great. Everything's healthy. Liam was born at 6 something. And I'm looking at my wife, right? We need you to come to the hospital. I said, yeah, I'll be there this afternoon. So we went to the hospital that afternoon, and I walked in the room and sat down. And he walked over to me with that 9-hour-old child. And he put him in my arms. Not me. It wasn't me. It was God and Alcoholics Anonymous that made that happen. It wasn't me. You know, when I was coming up to 5 years sober, as it was time, I listened to all what the old-timers said. Don't take that sick mind of yours into an innocent person's life, or you stay away from relationships. And I actually listened. Because the woman that used to tell me that was Jackie, and she used to scare the heck out of me. She was probably one of the toughest ladies I ever met. And I listened to her. And so I started there around 5 years. Like, how do you meet somebody? I don't know how to meet somebody. So I went online and did it. And I saw this picture of this woman, and, we started exchanging whatever you do on there. I'm not a real tech guy, if you haven't noticed. I have one suit, one pair of dress shoes, and that's it, and you're looking at it. And I had no idea what to do, but we started talking and stuff, and then it came time for the first date. Now, I think I got the perfect plan for the first date. Now, this lady I met, she has never been to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. She's not an alcoholic. She said she had been with alcoholics, but she had never been to an AA meeting or anything like that. So this was my idea of a first date. How'd you like to go to an AA meeting? It gets better. I'm not going to leave you on that note. I said it's a 5-year medallion. And it's for me. She turned me down flat. We went out the next night, and we've been together ever since. As a matter of fact, come this July, we'll have been married 5 years. Not me. Not me. God and Alcoholics Anonymous. It was me. When I met, she was insistent that we take trips. She loved going down south, and she loved going twice a year. And I'm going, no, I'm not going. I'm not doing that. And it had nothing to do with the booze. It had everything to do with the almighty dollar. I never wanted to be homeless, without food, or go without smokes, ever again. And that's why I didn't want to go. Even today, I can walk down the street, and I see a half a smoke on the ground, and my mind goes, oh, that's a keeper. And she would listen to this, go on periodically, and then she just went and bought the tickets and then sprang it on me at a dinner. Says, hey, we're going to Cuba, and I didn't get cancellation insurance. Boom. So we went on our first trip, and we went to Cuba. I didn't know what to expect. I love the sun, I love tanning, I love the ocean, and I love floating in the ocean. So we check into our room, and I look over to the side. And there's a 26er sitting there. And I looked at her, I said, hey, is that free? She goes, yeah. So I grabbed it and I threw it in my bag. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I know lots of people that drink normally. I can take it for them. Will they put another bottle there tomorrow night? She goes, no, that's it. What kind of place we're going and staying at? And again at the same resort, because God follows us all, follows me everywhere. I was standing in line at the buffet, and a gentleman came up to me. I have a tattoo of a circle of triangle on my neck with my dry date. And a gentleman came up, tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, is that AA symbol there? I said, yeah, that's from the big book, circle and triangle, right? He goes, I just want to come over and say thank you. It's because of Alcoholics Anonymous that my dad's last 24 years of his life, he was sober, and we got to know each other again. So thank you very much. I never seen that man the rest of our vacation, but his impact on my life made a lot that day. Through over the years, I owed a lot of money, and I'm debt-free today. And, well, almost, right? And I was able to get all my teeth fixed because I had barely no teeth at all when I came back into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was able to do that over the years. And 3 years ago, it was time to get my driver's license back. So I phoned the MTO, and I said, well, what do I have to do to get my driver's license back? She goes, you have your driver number? I said, yeah, because I happen to have another license, because when they asked to take my license, I gave them one. I had two. So I had one in my wallet. It was my ID, expired driver's license. And she goes, oh, you got to take Back on Track and stuff. And I said, well, just out of curiosity, I said, when did I lose my license? She goes, 2005. You don't remember when you lost your licenses? I had a lot of stuff going on in my life at that time, right? I just didn't have time to take care of everything. So I did the Back on Track, and as I said, I'm not a real tech guy. So I prayed on it. And a lot of people said, yeah, you can do that, no problem. Just concentrate the best you can. Because I really learned how to read coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. At the closed meetings and the 12 and 12 and big book meetings, I learned how to sound words which I couldn't do unless they were and the. So I was able to take that course online, and then now I got my learner's permit. I'm 61 years old with my learner's permit. And then I got my G2. Sure? Does that sound good? Yeah, G2. And then I was able to get my license, and I was able to purchase a vehicle a couple years ago. And something, it's a real pleasure and honor. I shouldn't say pleasure. It's an honor and a privilege to have a driver's license. I never thought was possible, And I do have to say one more thing. Before I was able to make a decision and turn my will and life over to the care of God, it was you guys. It was you guys that helped me through those times. It was you guys that said, keep coming back. Remarkable things will happen if you stay in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have no idea what will happen, but it's going to be better than where you are now. And if there's anyone new or coming back, please stay. We need you here. I need you here. And I'm going to say the same thing. I don't know what's in store for you, but I can guarantee it can get better. It can get better. Thank you so much for listening.